Well, welcome everybody. My name's Barry Anderson. I'm a member of the Wokingham District Veteran Tree Association and based here in Charvil. And Charvil's one of the parishes in Wokingham Borough. I'm part of a small team of surveyors, together with my wife Claire and one of our friends Sarah. And we've been surveying trees in the area for the past few years. So today I'll be talking a little bit about our experiences doing that surveying, and I'll be showing you some of the trees that we've got in the area together with some of the fauna. So you may well be asking, where's Charvil? So hopefully this map will give you an idea. We are perched towards the northern part of Wokingham Borough, and we have Wargrave and Twyford, Hurst, Woodley and Sonning as our neighbours. And you can see just to the north there, the northern boundary is the River Thames, and beyond that is Oxfordshire. In terms of size, we are quite a small area actually. Wokingham Borough itself is approximately 180 square kilometres, and we are a modest 2% of that at less than 4 square kilometres. But we do have a wealth of rivers and lakes, in fact, within Charvil, and I'll show you some of the photographs of that coming up. So in terms of the tree surveying that we've been doing, we started in 2018, and our first mission, in fact, was to resurvey a lot of a number of trees, approximately 100 actually, of trees that had already been surveyed some 10 years prior to that. And the reason that we had to resurvey them was that the data was deemed to be a little bit inaccurate. Some of the OS grid references weren't particularly that accurate. The technology is far easier these days with apps on phones, is the way we've been doing it. So we had to revisit all of those trees, which was quite a complex thing in its own right, actually, trying to track down which tree was which. Now, specifically, what we're looking at is veteran trees. So that's trees which have a circumference of 3 meters plus, generally, depending on the type of tree. But most of the trees that we have in the Charvil area are either oak trees, willow trees. We have some ashes, elms, some limes and hawthorns, to give you an idea. So in the case of, say, a maiden with a single trunk, we would measure 1.5 meters off the ground, measure the circumference. If it's more than 3 meters, then we would log all that information. We would make sure we took the grid reference, make note of the setting, whether it's in somebody's garden or whether it was in a field or by a ditch, those sorts of things. We'd take photographs, we'd log the fact, we're trying to find out or determine if the tree was in a healthy condition or whether it was deteriorating, a state of decline, and make note of any other notable features such as habitat or if there's any fungal growth, etc., etc. And once we've collected all our information, the next step is to log that data initially onto a spreadsheet, and then the spreadsheet, all that data gets checked and loaded into our web sheet. So a quick plug for our wdvta.org.uk website here. Very slick, very neat, and it allows us, and anybody in fact, if you wanted to go onto our website, to click on any particular parish area within Wokingham. There's about 13 or so in total. In this case, Charvil, and you can see how many trees have been logged at the moment. It's about 240. So, and the neat thing is, once we've logged all that information, the trees will appear on the website, and we can click on any one of those, and we can see the information popping up. We can get the full record together with photographs. So let's go on a quick tour around the northern part of Charvil, and we can start in Charvil Meadows, and we'll follow the path that you can see in front of you. So the River Loddon flows through the area, and the River Loddon feeds into the River Thames. Now the Loddon itself has a number of tributaries that flow in and out of it, and this is one of those tributaries. This is Old River, and you can see here a picture of some nice coppiced willows, and there's some really interesting history associated with growing of willows, and particularly coppice willows, for making baskets to capture eels, and that dates back to medieval times. In fact, there's reference to it in the Magna Carta. So eels being the staple diet of Londoners dating way back when, and I guess it still is. So we're heading downstream until we reach this backwater. Now the backwater itself was funded by Thames Water. The excavation was undertaken last year, and fundamentally what that will provide is a resting place for the fish flowing down the river, particularly when it's in full flood, as it has been more recently. You can see from the pictures that we've been planting some small disease-resistant elm trees, and these trees in particular have been planted with the view to attract a number of butterflies and moths into the area, and in particular the white letter hair streak and the white spotted pinion moth. The white letter hair streak in particular has been declining quite radically since the 1970s, and in fact the numbers are only about 10% of what they were back in those days. So hopefully these trees will grow and flourish and provide a food source as they flower for these particular species. So we're now moving north in the northern parts of Charvil, and we're overlooking a farmer's field where we can see a number of grand old oak trees, the largest of which is on the right hand side. Now this is in fact the largest tree that we have in Charvil, and the photograph doesn't really do it justice, but this magnificent oak tree, old oak tree, measures somewhere in the region of 5.5 meters in circumference, which dates the tree back hundreds of years, way back to probably when Oliver Cromwell was marauding round the country doing battle with the Cavaliers and the Roundheads. So if this tree could tell a story, I'm sure it could. I touched on the fact that we've had a lot of rain, certainly earlier on this year. A lot of the fields in the vicinity have been flooded, as you can see here. But not all of the trees in the area are saddened by the fact that there's lots of water. And this particular crack willow you can see is flourishing, very, very happy to be submerged. And we talk about some of the complexities in measuring some of the trees. This is a great example actually, because this is in fact one single tree, and all of the various different branches stem from somewhere in the middle of that. So not only is it underwater, but it's also very difficult, as you can imagine, to try and measure it. So the best thing that we can do is to estimate it. In fact, we pace around the bottom and try and get some sort of sense how big it is or how big it might be at the base of the tree. Now, again, slightly nondescriptory, but this is one of the alders that we have alongside the river. And again, it really relishes the idea of being wet. And the wood in particular, if you're not familiar with the alder, it's used in making lock gates. And in fact, a lot of the wooden piles in Venice are made from this particular wood as well. So very durable in wet conditions. And in fact, this particular tree might not be able to see, but it's riddled with holes, and we think it's home to about 10 to 12 different families of woodpeckers. So it's doing its bit. So in terms of the general health of the trees in the area, on the left-hand side we've got a very healthy oak tree, but on the right-hand side we've got an ash tree which is suffering from ash dieback. It's in, as you would imagine, a state of decline, but thankfully it is the only ash tree in the area that we've spotted with this particular disease, which is something to be thankful for. The one thing that we have been keeping a close eye on is the existence of the processionary moth and caterpillar, and I'm sure you'll be well aware that any contact, in particular with the caterpillar, can have some real adverse effects on your health. So we're moving further south now, and this, for once, this isn't a field. This is actually a lake. This is a quick view of one of the lakes that we have in Charvil. And at the far end of the lake, we have this grand old ash tree, which sadly has fallen apart, actually split right down the middle, fallen into 3 parts. It's still alive, very much seems to be surviving okay. Lots of in the summertime, lots of branches and greenery seen from this particular tree, which is all very good. Now, the National Tree Wardens scheme was set up by the Tree Council in 1990, and to commemorate its 30th anniversary, the Tree Council organised for 30 disease-resistant elms to be planted throughout the UK, and tree wardens were invited to apply for an elm. So we're happy to announce that our bid proved successful, and the anniversary elm was planted in January of this year, 2021, and you can see it there. It stands about 4 meters in height, so it's a nice tree, and it's taking pride and place on one of the mounds overlooking our local school. So finally, I touched on surveying at the beginning, so I'll finish off with that. Just to talk about some of the complexities that we've faced with surveying. And this was the location, or is the location, of a crack willow. So somewhere in and amongst all of that undergrowth is a tree. So this has been one of the problems that we've been facing, having to try and find trees, hack back the undergrowth to do our surveying. But that's one good example of that. We've now completed the survey of our area. We've revisited the 100 trees I mentioned earlier on, and we've added another plus or minus 170 veteran trees to our list. So we've got a total of about 270 trees on the list. Now, within that list, probably the most complicated and difficult survey that we had to do was this row of lime trees. Actually, there's about 21 of them in this row, and the particular problem that we faced was having a set of data where we weren't quite sure which tree related to which one on the database on our list, bearing in mind that the grid references were slightly out. We're having to look at the photographs to try and work out which tree tallied with which. All of the trees were round about 3 meters in girth as well. So were they a veteran tree 10 years ago? Are they now a veteran tree? So it was a really complicated business trying to make sure that we tied up all of the original data with the new information and all the accurate grid references. In effect, it probably took about 5 trips to this line of trees to make sure that we had everything in order. So that brings us to a close. I hope you've enjoyed hearing a little bit about Charvil and our trees and the surveying that we've been doing, and hopefully you'll be able to come and visit us soon. Goodbye from me.